Royal Crown Secondary School was colder than any wind. Amara Okoro was gone. The announcement from the principal, Mr. Jacob, was brief, clinical, and devastating. He spoke of a tragic accident, his voice heavy with a sorrow that felt both genuine and distant. The words echoed in the assembly hall, but they didn't make sense. Amara? The girl whose laughter was the school's unofficial soundtrack? The one who organized study groups, shared her lunch, and had a smile that could disarm the strictest teacher? Chioma, her best friend, felt the world tilt on its axis. She stood frozen, the faces around her blurring into a collage of shock and disbelief. She remembered just yesterday, Amara had squeezed her hand, laughing about a funny video, promising to help her with her chemistry homework later. It was impossible. A mistake. Amara wasn't a tragic headline. She was vibrant, breathing, living. The collective gasp of over 1,000 students was a physical force, a wave of shared pain. But for Chioma, it was a silent scream trapped in her chest. She saw Beezy, the queen bee of their class, dab a perfectly manicured finger at her eye. She saw David, the school's star athlete, stare blankly at the stage. Everyone was sad, but Chioma felt a deeper, more personal robbery. The other half of her soul had just been extinguished. The days that followed were a wash of muted gray. The once bustling hallways of Royal Crown were now hushed, filled with whispered conversations and downcast eyes. Amara's empty desk in class was a gaping wound, a constant, painful reminder of the void she'd left behind. Teachers spoke in softer tones, homework was postponed, and a somber mood clung to the school like a shroud. Chioma moved through it all like a ghost. She'd see a flash of a bright head wrap and her heart would leap, thinking it was Amara, only for the hope to be crushed a second later. Every corner held a memory, the spot by the library where they shared secrets, the canteen table where Amara would steal her meat pie, the science lab where they giggled through experiments. The world felt fundamentally broken without her in it. Her parents tried to comfort her, but their words were hollow. How could they understand? Amara wasn't just a friend, she was the keeper of Chioma's childhood, the co-author of her happiest memories. The grief was a physical weight, pressing down on her, making it hard to breathe, hard to think, hard to do anything but remember the sound of a laugh she would never hear again. A week after the funeral, a small, subdued affair that felt more like a nightmare than reality, Amara's mother called Chioma. Her voice was thin and brittle, like a dried leaf. She asked if Chioma could come over and help pack some of Amara's things. "It's too hard for us," she'd whispered. Maybe you can help us choose what to keep." Chioma agreed, though the thought of stepping into Amara's room felt like walking on glass. The room was exactly as Amara had left it. Her textbooks were stacked neatly on her desk, a half-finished sketch of a flower lay beside them, and her favorite yellow sweater was draped over her chair. The scent of her vanilla body spray still lingered in the air. It was a perfect preservation of a life cut short, and the sight of it made Chioma's knees weak. She started with the bookshelf, her fingers tracing the spines of novels they had read together. Then she moved to the closet, folding clothes that still held the faint warmth of her friend. It was under a pile of old yearbooks at the back of the closet, tucked away in a shoebox, that she found it. A simple, leather-bound journal with a small, broken lock. Chioma's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew, instinctively, that this was something private. But a desperate, gnawing need to feel close to Amara, to understand anything about the last few weeks, overpowered her hesitation. Back in the safety of her own room, the diary sat on her bed, feeling heavier than its weight. Chioma's hands trembled as she pried open the cover. The lock was already broken, as if Amara herself had wanted it to be found. The first page was dated 6 months ago. The handwriting was Amara's, the same loopy, elegant script she used for her school notes. But the words were different. They weren't the bright, bubbly thoughts of the girl everyone knew. October 12th, * another day, another performance. The smile is getting heavy. It feels like a mask I've glued to my face. Sometimes I'm scared that if I stop smiling, my whole face will just crumble. Chioma thinks I was laughing at David's joke in chemistry today. I was, but not for the reason she thinks. I was laughing because if I didn't, I was going to start screaming. *. Chioma read the entry 3 times. Performance? A mask? The words felt alien. She remembered that day in chemistry. David had made a silly pun, and Amara had thrown her head back, her laughter echoing in the lab. It had seemed so genuine, so real. Chioma had laughed with her, feeling the warmth of their shared joy. Now, that memory was tainted. It was a lie. A carefully constructed illusion. A cold dread began to creep up Chioma's spine. This diary wasn't just a collection of memories. It was a confession. And she was holding the truth about her best friend's secret life in her hands. Chioma couldn't sleep. She stayed up all night, the small lamp on her desk illuminating the pages of Amara's diary. Each entry was a small chisel, chipping away at the perfect statue of the friend she thought she knew. The diary revealed a world of silent anxiety and crushing pressure that Amara had navigated all alone. October 25th. Dad was so happy about my physics test score. That's my girl. Always the best, he said. He doesn't know I stayed up for 2 straight nights, that I felt sick with worry, that I cried in the bathroom before the test. He just sees the 98%. It's like the grade is me, and the real me, the scared, tired one, doesn't exist. I wish, just once, he'd ask if I was okay, not just if I was the best. The entry hit Chioma like a punch to the gut. She'd been there when Uncle Okoro had praised Amara, patting her on the back. Chioma had felt proud of her friend. She never once considered the cost of that perfection. She, too, had only seen the 98%, not the silent tears that came with it. A profound sense of guilt began to bloom in her chest. She was Amara's best friend. She was supposed to know. How could she have been so blind? She'd been standing right next to Amara, yet she had been miles away, completely unaware of the war her friend was fighting inside her own mind. The diary wasn't just about parental pressure. It chronicled smaller, daily hurts, incidents Chioma had witnessed but never truly seen. She read about a party they'd both attended, an event Chioma remembered as fun and carefree. Amara's entry painted a different picture. November 5th. BZ told everyone my dress was brave. She said it with a smile, so everyone laughed. Chioma thought she was complimenting me. But I know BZ. Brave meant it was ugly. It was her way of calling me out in front of everyone without being openly mean. It's what she does. She gives you these tiny paper cuts with her words, and you're expected to smile and bleed quietly. I spent the rest of the night hiding in the corner, feeling my dress swallow me whole. Chioma's blood ran cold. She remembered the moment clearly. BZ had sauntered over, her eyes scanning Amara's dress. Wow, Amara, that's a brave choice. You pull it off though. Chioma had beamed, thinking it was a typical BZ backhanded compliment that ultimately landed on the positive side. She hadn't seen the malice in it, the calculated cruelty designed to undermine Amara's confidence. Now, replaying the scene in her mind, she saw the flicker of pain in Amara's eyes, the way her smile tightened for a fraction of a second before she'd replied with a cheerful, "Thanks, BZ." Amara had been bleeding and Chioma, her protector, her other half, had been oblivious, smiling along with the crowd. The guilt was becoming suffocating. Chioma turned the page, her heart aching. The next few entries were about David. Not the popular, charming David everyone saw, but David through Amara's eyes. A beacon of unknowing hope and, ultimately, unintentional pain. November 18th. He spoke to me today. He asked to borrow a pen. My heart did this stupid, frantic dance in my chest. For the rest of the day, I felt like I was floating. Cecilia, he probably doesn't even remember my name. But he smiled at me, a real smile, and for a minute, the mask didn't feel so heavy. For a minute, I felt seen, The raw vulnerability in the words made Chioma's eyes well up. Amara had nursed a secret, powerful crush on David. She had catalogued every small interaction, every fleeting glance, imbuing them with a significance David could never have known. Chioma knew Amara thought he was cute, but she had no idea it ran this deep, this desperately. Then came the entry that broke Chioma's heart. It described the day the debate club list was posted. Amara had been practicing for weeks, hoping to impress him. December 2nd. My name wasn't on the list. I was trying not to cry when David walked past with his friends. He glanced at the list and laughed. Who even are half these people? He said. At least all the cool people made it. He didn't see me standing there. To him, I was one of the nobodies. Just a face in the crowd. It was such a small thing. He didn't mean to hurt me. But it felt like he had slammed a door in my face. The one door I thought might lead to a little bit of light. Chioma felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp, directed not just at David's carelessness or BZ's cruelty, but at the entire social structure of their school. It was a system that elevated a select few, rendering everyone else invisible. Amara, despite her sunny disposition, had felt like one of the invisible ones. The diary confirmed it. BZ wasn't a physical bully. She didn't shove people into lockers or steal their lunch money. Her methods were far more insidious. She was an architect of social anxiety, a master of the backhanded compliment and the exclusionary whisper. January 10th. BZ invited everyone on our road to her birthday party this weekend. Everyone except me. She did it right in front of me, handing out the little glittery cards. She even looked at me and gave me a little pitying smile, as if to say, "Oh, you didn't think you'd be included, did you?" Chioma was angry for me, but I told her it was fine. It's easier to pretend it doesn't hurt. But it does. It feels like I'm standing on the outside of a window, watching all my friends have fun in a warm room while I'm freezing outside. Chioma remembered that day. She'd wanted to confront BZ, to scream at her. But Amara had stopped her, shaking her head with that placid, unreadable smile. "It's not a big deal, Chi," she'd said. "I'm busy that weekend anyway." It was another lie, another performance to protect others from a pain that was eating her alive. Chioma closed the diary, her knuckles white. She couldn't just sit with this knowledge. She couldn't let Amara's silent screams go unheard. The grief that had been a passive, heavy blanket was now morphing into something else, a fierce, burning resolve. The next day at school, Chioma walked with a purpose she hadn't felt since Amara's death. She saw her target by the lockers, holding court as usual. BZ was laughing, flipping her long braids over her shoulder, the center of her own universe. The sight of her carefree happiness made Chioma's stomach clench. Chioma walked straight up to her, ignoring the circle of friends. "BZ, I need to talk to you." Her voice was low and steady, cutting through the chatter. BZ raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Chioma? What's up? Are you okay?" The fake concern in her voice was like fuel on a fire. "I'm not okay," Chioma said, her voice dropping to a whisper so only BZ could hear. "I know what you did. I know about the brave dress. I know about the party invitations. I know about the paper cuts." She used Amara's own words, and the effect was immediate. The smirk on BZ's face faltered. A flicker of confusion, then fear, crossed her features. I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I think you do," Chioma said, her eyes boring into BZ's. Amara wrote it all down. The color drained from BZ's face. For the first time, Chioma saw the queen bee look truly, utterly terrified. BZ tried to recover, to put her mask of cool indifference back on. She wrote what down? "Chioma, you're not making any sense. You're grieving, it's understandable, but don't come at me with crazy accusations." Her voice was sharp, but her eyes darted around, checking to see if anyone else was listening. "It's not an accusation," Chioma said, her voice dangerously calm. She pulled out her phone, where she had photographed the page. She held it up for BZ to see. She gives you these tiny paper cuts with her words, and you're expected to smile and bleed quietly. BZ's eyes scanned the text, her lips parting in a silent gasp. The phone screen reflected in her wide, panicked eyes. That's not what I meant," BZ stammered, her composure finally shattering. "It was just a joke. We all joke around." Amara knew I was kidding. But her words lacked conviction. She was looking at a ghost's testimony, and there was no arguing with it. "Did she?" Chioma pressed, her heart pounding. "Did she really know you were kidding, BZ? Or did she just pretend she did because she was too kind to call you out on your cruelty?" A tear escaped BZ's eye, a single, genuine drop of emotion. The queen bee had been dethroned by a dead girl's words. The encounter left BZ visibly shaken. For the rest of the day, she was quiet, withdrawn. Her usual circle of friends seemed confused by her silence, their whispers following her down the hall. Chioma had planted a seed, and now she had to see if it would grow. She felt a grim satisfaction, but it was hollow. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Her next target was David. She found him at the sports field, practicing with the football team. He was in his element, confident and powerful. Waiting for a break, Chioma approached him, her stomach churning with a different kind of anxiety. David wasn't malicious like BZ. He was just oblivious. And sometimes that was just as dangerous. "David?" she called out. He turned, a friendly, slightly sweaty smile on his face. "Hey Chioma. What's up?" He seemed genuinely happy to see her, which somehow made what she was about to do even harder. "I need to ask you something about Amara," she began, her voice softer than it had been with BZ. "Do you remember the day the debate club list came out last term?" He frowned, thinking. "Vaguely. Why?" "You said something," Chioma said, her gaze unwavering. "You said, At least all the cool people made it. Amara was standing right there. She heard you. David's smile vanished, replaced by a look of utter confusion. I said that? I would never have said that to hurt her. I know you wouldn't, Chioma said, her voice softening with a sad empathy. But you did. She wrote about it. She said it felt like you'd slammed a door in her face. She watched his face as the weight of his careless words finally landed. The confusion shifted to dawning horror, then to a deep, gut-wrenching regret. David sank onto the bleachers, running a hand over his face. "Oh God," he whispered, the sound muffled. "I was just joking with my friends. I didn't even see her. I swear, Chioma, I didn't even see her." The excuse hung in the air between them, and they both knew how weak it sounded. That was the entire point. He hadn't seen her. "She had a massive crush on you, David," Chioma said quietly, delivering the final blow. "Every word from you was like gold to her. And that one careless comment, it crushed her. She wasn't trying to be cruel, but he needed to understand the full scope of his unintentional impact." David looked up at her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. The popular athlete, the school hero, looked like a lost little boy. "I had no idea," he said, his voice choked. "She was always smiling, always laughing. How could anyone know she was hurting?" It was the question everyone was asking, the question that haunted Chioma's every waking moment. "Because we weren't looking hard enough," Chioma answered, her own voice thick with emotion. "We saw the smile, but we never looked into her eyes." She left him there on the bleachers, staring out at the empty field, lost in a sea of regret. 2 down. But the hardest conversation was yet to come. 4 days, Chioma avoided the one place she knew she had to go, Amara's house. The thought of facing Mr. and Mrs. Okoro with the diary's contents felt like an impossible betrayal. They were grieving the loss of a perfect daughter, and Chioma was about to tell them that the perfection they cherished had been a gilded cage. She clutched the diary to her chest, the leather worn from her constant handling. It felt like a sacred text, a painful gospel she was compelled to preach. Finally, summoning every ounce of courage she possessed, she walked the familiar path to their front door and knocked, the sound echoing her own frantic heartbeat. Mrs. Okoro opened the door. Her face, once so full of life, was now a mask of sorrow. Her eyes were puffy and red-rimmed. When she saw Chioma, a flicker of warmth entered her expression. "Chioma, dear, come in." She led her to the living room, where Mr. Okoro sat staring at a photograph of Amara on the mantelpiece. The air in the house was heavy, suffocating with unspoken grief. They offered her a drink, asked about school, the small talk a flimsy shield against the gaping hole in the room. Chioma knew she couldn't delay. Taking a deep, shaky breath, she placed the diary on the coffee table between them. "I found this," she said softly. "It's Amara's diary. I think you need to read some of it." Mr. Okoro looked at the diary with suspicion, while Mrs. Okoro reached for it with a trembling hand. "Her diary?" she whispered, as if the object itself was a ghost. Chioma had bookmarked specific pages, the ones that spoke directly of them. She opened it to the entry about the 98% on the physics test. She didn't read it aloud. She just pointed to the page and watched as Mrs. Okoro's eyes scanned the familiar handwriting. Chioma saw the exact moment the words registered. A sharp intake of breath, a hand flying to her mouth. She passed it to her husband, her own face a canvas of disbelief and dawning agony. Mr. Okoro read it, his stoic facade beginning to crack. His brow furrowed, his lips tightened. He read the line, asterisk, "I wish, just once, he'd ask if I was okay, not just if I was the best." Asterisk. He looked up from the page, his eyes meeting Chioma's. The confusion and denial were warring with a terrible, emerging truth. This can't be right," he stammered. "We loved her. We were so proud of her." "I know you loved her," Chioma said, her voice cracking. "But the diary says, it says she felt like she could never make a mistake, that your love was tied to her success. She was scared to disappoint you. She was drowning, and she felt like she couldn't tell you because she didn't want to stop being your perfect girl." The words, spoken aloud in that silent room, were devastating. Mrs. Okoro let out a sob, a raw, wounded sound that tore through the quiet. The perfect picture of their family, the one they had cherished and polished for years, had just been shattered into a million pieces. The grief in the room transformed. It was no longer just the sorrow of loss. It was now poisoned with guilt and regret. Mr. Okoro, a man Chioma had only ever seen as strong and unshakable, slumped in his chair, his face in his hands. his shoulders shook with silent sobs. Mrs. Okoro was openly weeping, clutching the diary to her chest as if it were her daughter. "We just wanted the best for her," she cried, her words muffled. "We came from nothing, Chioma. We wanted her to have every opportunity, to be successful, to have a better life than we did. We were pushing her because we loved her." "I know," Chioma whispered, tears streaming down her own face. But she didn't feel the love. She only felt the push. The truth was brutal, but it was out. For the first time, Amara's parents were seeing their daughter not as a collection of achievements and accolades, but as a fragile human being who had been crying out for help in a language they had failed to understand. They sat there for what felt like hours, united in a new, more complex sorrow. The diary lay between them, a testament to a pain they had helped create. The knowledge didn't bring Amara back, but it changed the nature of her memory. They weren't just mourning her absence anymore, they were mourning the girl they had never truly known. Months had passed. The Amara's Smile initiative was now a real thing at Royal Crown. A small, comfortable room had been designated as a safe space, run by a school counselor, where students could go to talk, no questions asked. Beezy, in a move that shocked everyone, was its most dedicated volunteer. David coached younger students, making a point to learn every single one of their names. The school was different. It was quieter, but also kinder. More aware. Chioma, with Mr. and Mrs. Okoro's blessing, had decided to seal the diary. But before she did, she read it one last time, looking for closure. She found it on the very last written page, an entry from just 2 days before Amara died. It wasn't filled with the usual pain. It was different. April 5th. Asterisk, the sky was so beautiful today on the walk home. A brilliant, fiery orange. It made me think of Chioma's laugh. So bright. So warm. Sometimes, I think she's the only real thing in my life. The only person who sees me and not the mask. I feel so guilty for hiding so much from her. She deserves better. Maybe tomorrow I'll be brave enough to tell her everything. Maybe tomorrow we can just sit and watch the sunset together, and I won't have to pretend anymore. Asterisk. Tears fell onto the page, smudging the ink. Amara had been on the verge of reaching out. Hope had been there, a tiny, fragile bud. It was a heartbreaking what if, but it was also a gift. It was proof of her love. It absolved Chioma of the guilt she'd carried, replacing it with a profound, aching love for the friend who had seen her as a beacon of light in the darkness. The final school assembly of the year was not for awards or accolades. It was a memorial. Not a somber, weeping one, but a celebration of the lessons Amara had taught them all without ever intending to. Mr. and Mrs. Okoro were there, sitting in the front row, holding hands. They looked sad, but not broken. They looked like people who were beginning to heal. Chioma stood at the podium, looking out at the faces of her schoolmates. She didn't read from the diary's painful entries. Instead, she spoke of Amara's laugh, her kindness, her love for fiery sunsets. She spoke of the importance of looking beyond the smile and asking, "Are you really okay?" She spoke of turning pain into purpose. Her final words were for her friend. "Amara's death was a tragedy that broke our hearts," she said, her voice clear and strong. "But her life, through the words she left behind, has changed us. Her real legacy isn't in her grades or her popularity. It's in the way we now look out for each other. It's in the kindness that has grown in her absence. Her smile is gone, but she has, in the end, given us all a reason to create more genuine smiles of our own." The silence that followed was broken by a soft, rolling applause. It was an ovation of understanding, of grief, and of hope. Amara was gone, but she would never, ever be forgotten. I hope this story touched your heart. Amara's journey is a powerful reminder that we never truly know the battles others are fighting behind their smiles. If her story moved you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. It might just save a life. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories that make you think and feel. And please, click that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us tell the stories that matter. Thank you for watching.